Well, I'm Dr. David Johnson, Professor of Medicine and Chief of Gastroenterology at Eastern Virginia Medical School in Norfolk, Virginia, and I'm just back from the American College of Gastroenterology annual scientific meeting in Vancouver, Canada. It was a smashing success. 7,500 approximately attended, 5,500 on site, and the composite by remote. Nonetheless, the science was outstanding, and I've chosen to break this into two segues of discussion in no prioritization order, but just to make it a little easier for you to follow snippets and keep this relatively short. So the first is a study that looked at monitoring inflammatory bowel disease by intestinal ultrasound, and this is an evolving technology. It's very much done at the bedside, real time. This is done by the University of Chicago in a retrospective study. They were following patients that were on upadacitinib, and these were patients then that were seen in the clinic, and they had an ultrasound, and the activity was assessed by the measurement of the terminal ileum or the thickness of the colon being 3 millimeters or less as in remission, and the absence of hyperemia by colorimetric Doppler. So these are patients that were assessed at the bedside. They found that the average time to adjustment, if they needed for a major adjustment in their medication, was 1 day versus 17 days in the conventional management group. And overall, as it relates to real-time assessment of the activity, it was overall shorter by nearly a month. So this is something that you'll see more and more in your institutions as this becomes more and more applicable and widespread, but clearly simple and easy, no radiation, lots of advantages, ready for prime time. Second was a study that was looking at the implementation of a digital cancer risk assessment tool in patients with potential inherited cancer susceptibility genes. And this is something that they were looking at, in this case, colon cancer, using an online type of evaluation. Normal would be that you'd expect 2 to 4% of the population would have some of these genetic susceptibilities. We're talking here Lynch syndrome and those type of genetic abnormalities that we'd pick up. But nonetheless, in this practice, they evaluated patients that met the National Cancer Cooperative Network as it relates to for genetic counseling and testing. And lo and behold, they found 15.6% of people had some genetic abnormality. So these profiles for cancer screening that we perhaps order because of the colon cancer may also have profiles that need to be further tested and evaluated by their primary care or their other subsequent oncogeneticists. Recognize that there are services that are available that help with some of this genetic testing and counseling. The American College offers the GI on demand, and this is something that is the GI Girl is something that potentially you can use advantage in your location, even though it's not available in your community. You can do this remotely. Next was a study looking at seladelpar, this is a peroxisome proliferative activated receptor, PPAR agonist, which is something that has emerged as a promising therapy because of the anti-inflammatory effects, in particular as it relates to liver diseases. We know that the bile acid metabolism is closely associated with the development of a number of liver diseases, from alcoholic, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, primary biliary cholangitis, and sclerosing cholangitis. And this was a study that was looking particularly at primary biliary cholangitis. And so they were, in this particular focusing on the pruritus, which can be very debilitating for these patients. And they were monitoring as a response to the serum interleukin 31, which seemed to be tracking for the resolution or improvement of this pruritic symptom. And they found that in a dramatic way, very striking and certainly highly significant, highly effective. This drug class and this specific drug had been granted an orphan drug status as it relates to breakthrough therapy designation in 2019. And literally the day after this presentation, it was granted an addendum to now allow and expand this to also include the pruritic effect in biliary cholangitis. So look for this drug in 2024 as it moves forward to FDA approval. It certainly will make a difference because this is approved. This is studied in patients with cirrhosis or with compensated cirrhosis. So it may get us around some of those issues we've seen in primary biliary cholangitis with use of obeticholic acid. So again, a high-profile drug, I think would have a major effect once it's released. Next is a study that looked at the digital prescription mobile application for adult patients that had irritable bowel syndrome, and recognized that the brain-gut behavioral therapies are recommended for irritable bowel, but we don't typically have the resources to provide these. Psychological therapies are recommended, but 60% of the gastroenterologists in the U.S. lack access to a GI psychologist. Again, this is another point of reference to GI Quick, because that is provided in some of the pathways that service provides. Again, take a look at that. But nonetheless, this particular study, as we start to look at directives, is an FDA-approved module. It's called Mahana, and they did an evaluation over approximately 700 patients included, and they found that there was about a 40% increase in their chance of them responding to their irritable bowel syndrome. So again, look at these developmental brain-gut behavioral therapies. This includes cognitive behavioral therapy, gut-directed hypnotherapy, and mindfulness. These are things that we're seeing for irritable bowel, functional diseases, non-ulcerative dyspepsia, but again, something that we really need to be embracing and profiling. And again, accessing our patients to these certainly improves the outcomes. The next is a study from the University of North Carolina that looked at esophageal food impaction. And the question is, do you do biopsies when you're in there doing these? Typically, you worry about aspiration, perhaps. You want to get in and out, get the bolus out. But nonetheless, the question is a biopsy be an incremental risk in those patients? And this is a study that was done retrospectively from the group at University of North Carolina. They looked at a 7-year database and found that in under half the cases where biopsies performed during the evaluation for the esophageal foreign body, and only 70% where the suspect was with eosinophilic esophagitis. Recognize if you don't do the biopsy, these patients sometimes don't come back. Diagnosis of EOE in some studies has been delayed for up to 6 years. So again, this is something that really could be done safely. I think ready and very actionable prime time. When you take out the foreign body, don't remember to take a couple biopsies. I'd recommend take them distal and proximal, both, again, for an EOE evaluation in particular. 2 studies that I wanted to highlight from the EOE, since we've talked just briefly about that and touched on it. One was the safety and efficacy of a selective sphingosine 1-phosphate receptor modulator, which is etrasimod. And this is a drug that you may know well from the release recently on use for ulcerative colitis, but now being applied to potential for eosinophilic esophagitis. The S1P receptors are found on the surface membranes of the immune cells, T and B cells. And this is a study to look at potentially that effect now being modulated with this drug, 24 weeks, and then a maintenance phase beyond that. It was highly effective, and something that, again, I think will be on the short horizon to see further studies. And this is a phase 2 study, but I think we'll see further studies as it relates to histologic output endpoints as well as symptomatic endpoints. It seems to be incredibly promising opportunity for another advance in EOE. With EOE in mind, we do have drugs that are available only for adults, recognizing for kids under 12 years of age, we don't really have any approved medications. So there was a study looking at dupilumab, and this is something that is recognizing an IgG4 monoclonal antibody that inhibits the interleukin 4R, which is the interleukin 4 and 13, which again modulates the T helper cells, which affect the processing for antigens and allergens. So again, makes a lot of sense why it works in EOE. This is the first as it relates to the benefit in kids, and the primary endpoints here were histologic and symptom endpoints, highly effective. So I would hopefully see this on the near future as it relates to augmentation, in particular now for children under 12 years of age. I'm going to stop with that and invite you to see part 2, and I'll pick back up on the next segue to ACG Highlights 2023. See you at the next session. Thanks for listening.